So first of all, good evening, everybody. I'm David Reese with Ideas Beyond Borders. I'm the Senior Director of Strategy, and we have an absolutely terrific evening or morning or afternoon, depending on where in the world you're from, planned for you. First, we're going to kick off with Faisal and his founder's story, which is really just a dramatic and amazing story if you haven't heard it before. And also, we're going to have a really pretty detailed overview of what we're doing in 2021 and begin to understand the kind of impact that IVB is having in the Middle East. And so I think, without further ado, I just really want to turn things over to Faisal. I'm just so proud to be working with Faisal. I think this is just an amazing organization. And by the end of this presentation, I can guarantee that you're going to think of that as well. Faisal, do you want to take over? Over to you.
Of course. Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see some familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. And it always brings me pleasure to see that more and more people are now familiar with the organization and familiar with what we do. And this is really my life mission and my life's passion. So a quick introduction about myself. I'm a counter-extremism practitioner. And a practitioner meaning I take theories into action. And the theory here is education, critical thinking is one of the biggest vaccines against misinformation and propaganda. I identify as a humanist, meaning I'm in favor of human flourishing. And I think that's pretty much most people. So I'm glad to be joining a lot of like-minded folks here. And as David said, I'm the founder of Ideas Beyond Borders and multiple other projects, which I think some of you have followed across the years. And I see some fake names that have followed me through my journey over the past 12 years in activism and other places. I'm originally from Iraq, and I'm a refugee from Iraq, and now I'm currently a US citizen as of 2019. On my limited free time, I'm an Instagram model, which really is not really bringing me a lot of anything positive, but it's more people putting me negative comments on my page. So how did I get here? How did my life journey really impact the work I do and really the projects that we run in the Middle East, and in some cases even worldwide? So I was born under the regime of Saddam Hussein, and that was, which I call the mother lode of misinformation. And the neighborhood that I used to grow up in used to be where many of Saddam Hussein generals used to live. And when the US invasion happened, or the US liberation, it depends on which part of the political aisle you're from, the neighborhood turned from a place where residents, mostly residential, which the kids are playing soccer in the streets, and there was peace, into a headquarters of one of the most really troublesome terrorist groups in the world, and that's Al-Qaeda. So many people ask me, how does that look like in daily life? And what it looked like is dead bodies on the streets. I remember some days in which the bus had to stop by the dead bodies and we had to walk over them so we'll be able to go to school. It's a state of constant paranoia in which you're really afraid of telling what you really believe in, because in some cases there are people around you who might be recruiters to that extremist group or are members of that extremist group that might reveal you to the people with guns. My crazy self, and at the time I was a hipster to some extent, I was talking about peace, and I was talking about bringing people together of different backgrounds and different sects, and with an environment in which extremism was flourishing, that is, unfortunately, was considered a radical act, which got me on some lists. I mean, I kind of forgot how many, of many groups from different sects. I consider myself, one of my latest articles when I left the country was that I was a uniter, that I united all of the militias to hate me. So that's a really impressive thing that you don't see on my LinkedIn profile. So now you have a very exclusive taste of that. So I left into Lebanon, and from that Malaysia and Southeast Asia, and came to the United States in 2013, where you can see my picture at the bottom, you can see I gained some weight because of the McDonald's and other American introductions. So unlike me, unfortunately, and that's where the continuation of that comes from, is that unlike me, who was able to escape from that environment of extremism, the majority of the people are living under authoritarian regimes. And what you see on the screen is actually a study from Freedom House, which actually ranks authoritarianism and censorship around the world. And you see that the Middle East and North Africa, and sometimes called the Greater Middle East, is unfortunately one of the worst when it comes to authoritarianism and extremism. So my story, unfortunately, is not unique. It's the story of thousands, if not millions, of people who, some of them are alive today and some of them are not. So that is really what the challenge that we face in the region as people from the region. And that's where the hope comes in, where we launched the organization that you attended the event of today, which is Ideas Beyond Borders. And the theory of education and providing people with opportunities and diverse perspectives away from extremism and censorship is actually something is favored by most people around the region. And the map here you see some of our followers, and we're only 4 years old, by the way, in which we have more than 4.8 million followers. And on COVID alone, just to bring it to the present, where we started the COVID-19 Stopping the Misinformation, Stopping the Spread campaign, which is focused on stopping the misinformation and the virus. And we have engaged more than 30 million followers. And we got a lot of media coverage, thanks to some of you, actually, I see that who are journalists and really care about what we do, and who took on yourself to actually start covering us. And you can see that 2020 impact results, in which we translated 18,000 articles. And by we, I'm talking about the amazing heroes, which I'm going to highlight to you in the next couple of slides. And with 15 books and 4 million plus followers. As a statistic, which I think always brings joy to my heart, and we will be gathering more and more data and testimonials from the people that directly benefit from IBB or indirectly, that 94% of the university program and university students said they would recommend IBB to a friend. So you're gonna like something when you recommend it to a friend. So that's definitely one great statistic that brings a lot of joy to my heart, which brings me to our mission. So what is really our mission and what we do? And to put it mildly, we are reverse ISIS. To put it strongly, is that we are the positive alternative to extremism. And how we do that is by promoting and translating articles about critical thinking, science, civil rights, pluralism, and many of the values that extremists really dislike. And you wonder why many of the books and the knowledge about these subjects are censored by the regional authoritarians in the Middle East and abroad. And the ultimate goal, which sounds lofty, but I think is definitely achievable if more of us work together, if there's more unity and there's more focus, we'll be able to bring a pluralistic Middle East led by people of the region. The issue that we are trying to solve, which I believe is a major part of the problem, and sometimes even the root of the problem, is the lack of knowledge that is available about these subjects. And there are many of the things, obviously, there are a lot of issues in the Middle East, but this is something that is really within our power. And we were able to demonstrate that it is not only doable, but it's actually doable on a much larger scale than ever before. And from Google, it was projected that only 3% of online content is available in Arabic, which is one of the most languages spoken in the world. Another statistic from the UN Development Report said there are more books translated to Spanish in 1 year than Arabic in 1,000. Just think about that for a bit. Let that sink in so you can understand what is the lack of information. When you go to a library, I mean, I live here now in New York City, and you go to the New York Public Library and go to the library in your home city. And just imagine that most what you see that is available in your language, which I'm assuming is English or Spanish, you'll see that most of that is actually not available in Arabic. And if it's available in Arabic, it's available in very small countries in which that are very much less populated. But if you go in the Middle East as a scope with more than 300 or more than actually sometimes 400 million people, you realize that most of that knowledge is not even accessible to them. And even actually in most cases, written by local authors. So forget about the translated content and the content from other languages, but rather local authors and local journalists are in many cases assassinated, sometimes kidnapped, and that's like the most generous way is that they are censored. So that's what we are up against. And disrupting the authoritarians is something I enjoy doing. And I think many of you here have that tendency too. So in 2021, so that's the present and the future, our core programs will grow. And that will grow from 30 million, which was in 2020, to 50 million in 2021. We started a podcast in 2019 that highlights many of these locals that I'm talking about, because in many cases, they're not given the platform that they deserve. So we created them a platform. Talk about immigrants being job creators. So we provided them with a platform. We have partnered with Wikipedia, AKA the mother of Wikipedia, Wikimedia Foundation, to start a program inside universities, started first in Iraq, to actually create a movement of knowledge, of contributors to Wikipedia. And that way, most knowledge will be accessible within cell phones and other ways. We have new projects coming up, which I have also a lot of exciting things, because many of them are actually physical on the ground. And they have that kind of, in many cases, tangible result and immediate results. And the first one and the second one, both are in post-ISIS territories. The first one deals with the library that ISIS destroyed. And what is the opposite of library being destroyed? Library being built. And that's what we do, what we're doing. We're restoring the arts and culture that they destroyed. And that's a program we're going to talk more about in details. And for those of you interested in arts and culture, please stay in touch with us, because that's something that we are launching, hopefully within the next couple of months. When I was talking about the heroes that exist in the region, I wrote an article, which actually maybe brought me to the spotlight to a lot of media venues, which was, it was easier to start a terrorist group in the Middle East than a liberal one. And part of the reason is that terrorists get funding so easily. They get support to their projects. While those who are moderates and those who actually are, in many cases, the majority, and those who actually want to create positive change, lack that support. And we started a program for these heroes. We call the Innovation Hub, in which we support innovative approaches to human rights, to humanism, and many of the values that both of us hold dear. We're utilizing, as a modern organization and as a digital organization, we utilize technology a lot, actually. And I hear that there are some people here from Silicon Valley attending us from the West Coast. And that is really, and I'm thinking in many cases in Silicon Valley, they call that solutionism, in which we actually are utilizing technology to save lives and change minds and disrupt, most importantly, disrupt authoritarian control. Here's the faces of some of these heroes. Unfortunately, many of them are not known, but they are the dearest to my heart. And I believe they should be known and they should be supported, because they are the future and the present of the Middle East. And these are the people, when people talk about where are the moderates, where are the people who want to create change, here are some of their faces. And here are the people who actually make things happen. These are the people who take a Jonas Stuart Mill book and convert it to Arabic. These are the people who take A Wonder, which is a book about curiosity for children, and translate it to Arabic. Here are some of their faces. Here are the people who actually live in the region, who I get connected to through the years and my work there, and those who actually want to create a change. And with us, they are supported and they're paid. Some of them are volunteers who really want to just create change for change's sake. And with us, they got the institutional support and the knowledge. These are some of the key messages when people ask what exactly in terms of the messages that you'd like to spread. And that is the name of the program, which is Beit al-Hikmah 2.0, translated into the House of Wisdom. So for those of you who are familiar to some extent with the Middle East, know about the era called the Golden Age of the Middle East. And the Golden Age of the Middle East, that was the era. So when you hear about algebra and you hear about calculus, even though, I mean, I'm sure many of you might not be fans of these two things, but these are things that were created in the era of the Golden Age. And that was the era in which the Middle East and most of the region there were receptive to new ideas, and most importantly, translating new ideas from different empires, and we're recreating the new version of it that we call the House of Wisdom 2.0. We have a lot of focus on critical thinking, because that is really one of the it's easier to tell people what to think, but it's harder to teach people how to think. And that's, I think, as I said, is the proven vaccine against misinformation and propaganda. That is the long-form solution to the region that is bombarded, unfortunately, in many cases, with misinformation and extremist propaganda. The third key message is that you, as an individual, whether in the Middle East or anywhere else, you can think for yourself with your own identity, and without having to get into tribal or sectarian narrative. You, as an individual, matter. And that's one of the key messages that we highlight. So in terms of metrics, you will see that our goals are move from 30 to 50 million. In terms of subscribers, these are people who really constantly see our content. We want to expand it to 200,000, and that's for just our website alone. And obviously, with more subscribers, with more power comes more responsibility. So we're expanding more content, expanding our engine, and I'll actually show you how our quality in terms of production of this content has really increased significantly. And thank really to many of you who supported us across the year, who helped us get into that. So I'm gonna show a video we just released, just as in 2 months ago, but in my head, everything is just. So this is a video introducing people to a theory that unfortunately is banned in many parts of the region, which is the theory of evolution. Or in some cases, if it is taught as just a hypothesis. And you will see, the person who is the voiceover, we recruited talent from National Geographic Arabic and National Geographic Abu Dhabi, and you will see some of how the quality has really increased to actually match the content that suppress misinformation. One of the main things that we have to do is to make the facts and the critical thinking as exciting and as engaging as misinformation and extremist thinking. And that's really the philosophy that I share, because in order for you to get people excited in your ideology, you have to make it exciting. So we stay away from boring, in some cases, long form articles and not form content, and focus on content that really targets the youth and the audience that we'd like to share. So this is, you'll see that the graphics, is really high quality, and our goal is to increase in that, not just is to increase the quality, not to reduce it. So this is an example of this video received roughly by now 1.2 million views. I believe Egypt was one of the most where this view was this video has been viewed, but also in many other parts of the region. So people say, how does your content look like? This is how it looks like. So I'm back to my presentation. So as I said, this is an example of our content. We're also going to be doing a lot of Wikipedia articles. And as I said, we are a partner of Wikipedia. And we're also going to do a lot of infographics. Now, books. Here are some of the books that we're going to be doing and releasing. If you see the book Uncovered, we actually have finished the translation of that book, and it's going to be released within the next couple of weeks. Heavens on Earth by Michael Shermer is pretty much not 80% done. It's going to be released next couple of, actually a month at the end of June. And on the right is actually the summary of John Stuart Mill, All-1, which is a version that was created by Heterodox Academy, and we make it available in Arabic. However, we changed the introduction to somebody from Syria, a Syrian dissident who was jailed for, I believe, he split coffee on Assad's picture by mistake. And that is the person who wrote the intro to this book. and the reason why we picked that is to actually make the intro and the content relevant to the people that we are trying to target. And we're aiming to release 48 titles this year. Some are within partners like Hindawi and the Minbar al-Hurriya, which is based in Morocco, and some are going to be our own translations. But really the goal of us and all of our partners is exactly the same: making knowledge accessible. Providing the platform to Arab liberals, we're continuing that and expanding it. As I said, one of the biggest victims of censorship and authoritarianism is not the West. It's actually people who are living there. It is the authors who are living there. It is those who are being denied a platform, denied their voice being sheltered, and they share the same ideas that many people here in the West, but in their own version, in their own, that matches their cultural identity and their history. And we created this platform called Billarabi, which translates in Arabic, to show that these values are shared by people in Arabic from the Arabic region and backgrounds. And you can see it's highlighted in both video and audio format, podcast format. And the video you see on the right is actually one of the Nobel the Nobel Prize for Literature, who was stabbed on his neck for writing a book that some people thought was mimicking a prophet or some religious figure. And when the person who actually when he actually stabbed the person, when he was interviewed by the media, he actually said, "I didn't even read the book. I heard someone told me to stab the person because the author was blasphemous." So this is the challenges that many people, local authors, in many cases local activists, that as of last week, a dissident activist in the province of Karbala, where I come from, in Iraq, was killed with a silencer because he said that corruption is bad. That's it. He said corruption is bad and he get killed for it. So this is how the standard is low for many of these authorities. Sometimes people say I've worked so hard to get a death threat. Trust me, it's actually pretty easy. So if anybody wants any training of how to get death threats in the Middle East, it's just a 5-minute workshop. So that's the challenges that many people there are facing on day-to-day basis. However, we are here for them. And that's the reason why we're succeeded, because we are from the region, helping people in the region. And that's where we have we have a youth-to-youth content model in which people from the region speak to people in the region. We're very much, as I said, tech-friendly, where we utilize technology a lot and we optimize our content for mobile and social media and utilize things that actually people watch. Over my journey of now more than a decade and a half, I built up strong relationships with a lot of Arab influencers, and that is organic. Is that many of the people that I know introduced me to other people I know, and then the circle keeps growing. As a result of growing, speaking of growing, we were able to get institutional partners, and one of them is, as I'm sure many people know what it is Wikipedia. And the goal, as I mentioned, is to create a knowledge movement. And it's a 2-year grant in which they gave us $270,000, in which we start first in Iraq and expand more into the region, in which we create more and more editors and contributors to Wikipedia, the world's largest encyclopedia. And for reference, if you look at articles from the founder of Wikipedia 7 years ago, in a newspaper, which I believe published in English called Sharq al-Awsat, said that Wikipedia Arabic was one of the least large in terms of size in the world, and we're changing that. And Wikipedia we get the attention of Wikipedia itself, and they funded us to actually create that knowledge movement inside the Middle East, starting first in Iraq and then expanding to the region. That is where we are literally reverse ISIS, where ISIS destroyed IBB builds. The difference there, if you look at Google, the University of Mosul books, you will see that there were a lot of initiatives. You know what the difference between us and them? We actually asked what the university wanted. So the books in many cases, there were children books sent to PhD students. And what shows that there was not much research and not much conversation happening with the people that really being impacted by the program. And with our difference is that we asked and partnered with the university library itself to get to know exactly what they need. They not only just needed books, they also needed computers and needed printers and needed access to digital journals. So we worked exclusively, and you will see like some of the pictures here. Most of them are academic books because that's what they liked and that's what they needed, really needed at this moment of time. And unfortunately, ISIS burned all of that library, and now most of these people do not have access to the academic books that they are teaching at the university. And in a great case scenario is in which you have 30 students sharing the same book. So we are changing that, and we're working with the university library and with the folks who are on the ground. We are really on the last stage to finalize this program, in which the books are in mysterious location because we don't share that, in which then it will be shared with the university library within the next couple of weeks. So you will see a video that will be shared on our page and ideally with our newsletter for those of you who are subscribers. And I recommend everybody to go to our website and subscribe to the newsletter, because we're going to give you a lot of updates on that. And you will see the latest video in which we actually finalized this program, in which we're able to provide at least to some bit what the university wanted. There are a lot of titles that they required, but we working with them, we looked at the priorities that they required, and then we make sure that we match that. We're also gifting them a small little Enlightenment library, in which it will be at the University of Mosul, in which people can give and take Enlightenment books, and we're going to supply it. Here, one of the books is written by an Iraqi sociologist, and there are many others. There's actually some students who study philosophy and others requested. So following the request of the people, and then we're going to put them there. And this is actually my takeoff in multiple other universities across Iraq, in which knowledge is being shared and knowledge is being appreciated. And that is the gift from IVB to the university, in addition to the rebuilding of the library. And that is a program that's really, I think, going to create a lot of change, especially in the arts and culture world. Most of these folks, mainly in the areas that ISIS destroyed, are disconnected from the global commerce. They're disconnected from the globe. And if you go to the basics of the basics, they actually do not have, most of them don't have a website. Most of them don't know how to get their things overseas. And in many cases, because the areas are mostly destroyed, art and culture is pretty much the only thing these people have that they can export. They cannot export cars and airplanes, because most of the factories are destroyed. Pretty much most of the things are destroyed. However, they have a history of thousands of years. And if you go more to Mosul, you see the history of Assyrians and other civilizations, and their guys, the intervention with the Romans and the Ottomans and all of that stuff. And that is something that really, we believe, will create a long-term sustainable solution to that area, in which we connect the strongest assets of that province to the world, and that is the arts and culture. I want to make sure that I'm good on time. It's 8:30, so I think I am good. So that is the Innovation Hub, which is the fellowship program, in which, why invent things from scratch? In many cases, there are a lot of projects on the ground that want to create change, that want to create positive change. They want to change their societies to get more access to ideas and to critical thinking and many different methods, like music. Who would have expected that there's a metal band in southern Iraq? Well, I expected that because I know them, but it is not something that is pretty common. And however, it's innovative ways for people to be able to reach different people from different backgrounds. And there's a comedian who constantly makes fun of authoritarians. He is not getting the support that he wanted. He reached out to me and reached out to the organization, asking if he can get help with marketing skills or get help in boosting his Facebook page, because he doesn't have access to a credit card and doesn't have it, unfortunately, because many of these countries have a very old banking infrastructure in which they cannot, again, be connected to the global commerce and most of the tools that we in the West have access to. Sex education in Mauritania taught by former slaves. And that's something I think really important. Mauritania is a country that is south of Morocco, that is the last country, last time I checked, is the last country to outlaw slavery in 1980. And there are people living today who are either former slaves themselves, real slaves, or children of slaves. And there is this group that reached out to us saying that many of these people live in extremely disconnected, many of them do not attend the schools, don't attend the public education system. They are very disconnected from the societies they live in. And even within societies they live in, they don't have sex education. So we received a proposal from them, and we're going to be working with them and supporting them with microgrants. We have multiple journalists who are in the region who are sick, as most of us are, with the spread of misinformation online and offline. And they would like to do workshops, in many cases, some cases in Jordan, in Iraq, in other parts of the region, to actually empower people over there using their own language, using a language that people are familiar with, from examples that they are familiar with, for them to be able to combat misinformation in their own society. So really the summary of the program is not, there are a lot of amazing people in the region who are trying to do amazing things. However, they lack institutional support. And we are here to be there for them. I'm going to mention that the fourth time that we are actually tech friendly. And we are now utilizing new tools, that we are experimenting with to see how they can help us disrupt authoritarians in the Middle East. And that is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, in many cases, are authoritarians' biggest nightmare, because they're not able to track the payments, all of the regulations they have about, for example, in the country of Egypt, as far as I knew of yesterday, as I fact-checked the statement, is that many activists are unable to get funding from overseas, because you get funding from a foreign government and might get you jailed for more than 5 years. In some countries where there's kind of heavy authoritarianism, and that is really kind of scary, because many of these authoritarians are now implementing or thinking of implementing, because in the Middle East, thank goodness, sometimes the authoritarians are incompetent, is to actually get some of the technologies China uses, like the Chinese firewall or the social credit system and all of that stuff, and communications tool like Signal and others, and actually making that accessible right now. And I believe that this is a very urgent thing before these authoritarians actually up their tech for them to be able to censor activists, to censor people, and to prevent people from communicating and expressing their own beliefs and their own ideas. And most importantly, providing people with VPNs and education on how they can circumvent the already existing censorship that is in the region. Another opportunity which cryptocurrency provides, not just only disrupting the authoritarians, but also backing the unbanked. The example that I mentioned of somebody who wanted to pay for Facebook, to pay for advertising, Iraq doesn't have, in most cases, a credit card system. It doesn't have Visa access and all of that stuff. Bitcoin and other currencies like mobile coin, which is developed by Signal and other, can actually be able to empower and connect many of these activists into the global market, because in most cases, they are amazingly disconnected. Most people, some stats say more than 90% still use cash on day-to-day basis. So most people can, and if they, as in the cases of many people that I know personally, Al-Qaeda comes into their home, asks them to get away and leave the country. People cannot carry cash with them. They need actually a digital solution in which they, in cases, urgent cases, which is unfortunately are more common than usual, to be able to store their currency and store their money. And when they're able to go to a safer place, they will have access to them. And these are new technologies, which I am also trying to learn and know more about. And I think they can be helpful really to people in the region that are focus and where we have most of our followers. So many people ask, what is the future? What do you like to do in the next 5 years? I mean, that's sometimes I get that question in dating, but in this case, this is a professional question, which is what is really that you're trying to achieve in 5 years, and in some cases in 4 years. And really, it's the goal is to be that leading source of Enlightenment thought and critical thinking, and be that leading source for support for people in the region who believe in Enlightenment critical thinking. So be the source, but also be the place in which there is a community being built and also community being supported. In terms of numbers, you can see on the screen is to reach to 100 million, as that will be really 1/3 of the people who have access to the technologies we see today, expand our social media capacity, our subscriber base, books or articles, and videos, and all of the engaging content that we create. So really the ultimate goal is to be the leader of Enlightenment and the voices of Enlightenment in the region. So with that leads me to the last slide. For some reason, actually, I enjoyed this presentation. So thanks to you. So what can you do to be part of our movement, to be part of the family? And first, most importantly, is to become a philanthropic supporter. Some of you I see on the list who have already supported us. I see Anna has been a monthly donor for a very long time. I know her as a friend on Facebook, so shout out to you. And then so being a philanthropic supporter, there are 2 links that are available. It's so easy. On our website in ideasbeyondborders.org, you will see the 2 options available. If you would like to donate in US dollars or the currency of your country, you can go there. And there is now, thanks to David, actually you see on the screen, and thanks to John, who is the expert in cryptocurrency, we now have a cryptocurrency donation button. So that is on the left. So it's the blue button there on the website. If you are interested in donating to us in a cryptocurrency, as I said, this is something that we are new to and we're really love to be part of. Tomorrow, I'm flying to the Bitcoin conference. So for those of you who might be there, we might able to see me, that I'm actually a real human being. I'm not just a fragment of your imagination. And for those of you who really want to support us in providing us with a physical space for events, I mean, if we look at some of our supporters and when they are based, some of them are based in California, New York, and some are in Alabama. And in many cases, we believe, and rightly so, that there are many supporters that still exist in these cities. So for those of you who are really interested to work with us to host events of IDB in your own city, and we're able to reach more people in the city that you live, and in some cases, people who might be visiting from a closer city or a closer state. So please reach out to us. You have David, me, and John. When you want to contact us on cultivation event, there is a group called the Friends of Ideas Beyond Borders, in which part of we're also to organize events. So please check that out and tell the world about us. We exist. We're real people. We're doing real change. And the easiest way to do that is our Facebook and Twitter. And we're also on YouTube. So for those of you who are tech savvy or semi tech savvy, please spread the word about us. Really, we cannot do this without you. So with that, I looking forward for the Q&A, and thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so what you can do is enter your questions in the Q&A, or alternately in the chat. So just go ahead and ask away. We really welcome your questions and dialogue. John, if you've noticed anything, because I know you've been monitoring the chat for the last few minutes, if you saw something, go ahead.
Yeah, let's give people a few minutes to ask questions. And we do have a few email questions if we want to start there.
Sorry.
So yeah, just why don't we start with one of the email questions that I received. I don't know if other people were emailing me during this, but you can always email me at john.figdor@ideasbeyondborders.org. So one of the questions that I have here is, which governments are most willing to work with IBB, and how do you work in the Middle East?
Governments and regions, because these are kind of in a way distinct. So far, the government that provided us with no trouble is the region of Kurdistan, which is the Kurdistan Regional Government, sometimes called the KRG. And that is where we are opening our first regional office. So KRG has been our most supportive. I'm actually pretty optimistic with some other countries in the region that are trying to kind of opening up, namely United Arab Emirates. There are a lot of talks of them opening up more of their society. Saudi Arabia, of all places. I know that Saudi Arabia has a very bad reputation, and they have a lot of work to do on that regard. But there were some discussions about opening up at least the allowing information ideas to spread. There are some countries that are so authoritarianism and extremism are a spectrum, and there are some countries that are more authoritarian than other. The one that is the most difficult is Yemen, because of the completely destroyed infrastructure when it comes to information. And there are, as I said, countries like Egypt in which they make it very difficult for activists to work. I really recommend following freedomhouse.org, and then you can look more into the details on what are the cases of authoritarianism and censorship over there.
So we have a question here, Faisal, for you. How do you choose the books to be translated? How are those choices made?
Well, question. That's there is actually a resource in our website, ideasbeyondborders.org, in which you see the resources, how the books are being chosen. And it's a kind of there's a system in place, and many cases the people there want. So that is number one category. Number two, the accessibility to the author. Some of the authors that you see are translated generously. One of them, for example, Steven Pinker, who was one of the first people when he heard about IBB and heard about what we do, donated his rights to his work, and actually Enlightenment Now and other books into us. So these are the two main categories: what people in the region want and what is censored, and also the accessibility to the authors.
Okay, Faisal, there's a question that's related. It goes back to what you were talking about before with the working with governments question. And it's simple. Why would you work with the government of Saudi Arabia when they're so cruel to dissidents? And maybe there's some nuance there that you'd want to share about which countries we'd want to work with.
We do not work with any governments in the region. The question that was previous is, which government has been most pain in the ass for you? We do not work with any government in the region. We don't receive any funding from them or work with them. What I was talking about is that there are some signs of opening up happening in Saudi Arabia. I think that they have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure you can list all the examples of feminists and women's rights groups and gay groups and all of that stuff, or being jailed and tortured, etc. So there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done. However, I don't want to give this long answer because there's a lot of people who have questions, but one of the main kind of, I would call it a form of misinformation or disinformation for a lot of political agendas, is spreading I call it the myth that the Middle East is a very monolithic and kind of very stable region, that the Middle East is as it is today as it was 4 years ago, and it will never change, and things are never going to happen. And that is, I think, is a myth. And there are signs of progress of some parts of the region compared to others, and there are signs of decline. In country where I came from, like Iraq, was far more open and secular than it is today. And so the region is in constant change, both in progress and decline. And as the region, as an organization that works in the region and monitors the region closely, it's very important that our work matches the reality on the ground. Because if we become super paranoid about one country, we might actually not be helping the people that we should help. While if we decided to be loose on one country, we not understand the censorship, and will not be able to teach the thing that they require for people to circumvent censorship. So I think is that our really the organization is to match what is happening on the ground. And I'm very aware of a lot of the criticism of all of these governments, including the one I come from, like government of Iraq. But really, I think that that doesn't mean just because there's government that is censoring on one thing or doing bad things on one thing doesn't mean that that cannot do something good on the other. So that's where the nuance comes from, is that nothing is all evil and all good. There are many cases, a lot of nuances, and as an organization that actually cares about getting things done, we have to understand the nuances for us to make an impact.
I have another question here, Faisal. This one is another anonymous question. It's, what are the main challenges you face working with activists in the Middle East?
Lack of digital literacy. One of the things that I would love, what I think is very important, that especially many people in tech world, etc. And there are some initiatives. I mean, there's works, for example, by Jigsaw, which is, and then Tunnel Bear VPN, which is one that is a partner who helped us in providing VPNs, is getting the activists and many of these people to know that they should change their IP address or be able to communicate safely. That, for example, if they are arrested, and they are in a country in which many activists get arrested, then it's very important for them to have the feature in which messages get deleted after 10 seconds of being sent. Things which I believe in a way are basic, but really for the tools are there. And as I said, like Signal, like Tunnel Bear VPN. So really there are two things, which is the educational, and that's where making them accessible, which is, there's one thing that is available, but doesn't mean it is accessible. And by accessible is that actually people understand it and understand how to use it. So I think is that this is one of the main challenges. Of course, there is a challenge on the ground, which is blasphemy laws, restrictions on freedom of speech, etc. So these are the real challenges in that pretty much most of the region faces. But back to getting things done approach, this is the one that is within our hands to actually change, and that is provide people with literacy, digital literacy, in which they are able to circumvent that censorship and be able to create change within their communities. So
Faisal, we just have one or two time for one or two more questions here, and I have one. This is an anonymous one. So I understand you do programs, mainly with Arabic countries in the Middle East. Are you thinking of expanding anywhere else, or not?
Yes, and we are actually. I mean, expanding is a really relative term. We, as an individual, and through actually many of your help in terms of getting our voice out there and being known as an organization, I've received multiple emails from Malaysia who want to do groups in Malaysia that want to do something really similar to IBB, to translate similar works, mainly ones about critical thinking, into Malay, which is a language also spoken in Indonesia, which is a really heavily populated country with more than, I believe, 200 million people. So there are multiple theories of expansion, is that either you be the ones controlling other people's efforts, or really build a network in which all of us from different regions of the world learn from each other. And that's actually the one that I find to be kind of more practical at the moment and easier to do. However, we have expanded beyond Arabic into the Kurdish language as of 2019. In the middle of 2019, we expanded to Farsi on a smaller scale. There are some conversations right now and which might be expanding to Afghanistan and also expanding really our Farsi program, whether us as an organization do it or working with partners in these countries. But really the main thing, and that kind of brings me to practicality, and I hope that's actually a message that gets resonate today, and that's how we were able to really get things done. As probably many of you may know me from the commentator world. So I was a commentator. I think that's actually a part of the reason why I became really known. And the commentator business and the nonprofit business are very different. And one is about getting things done, and one is about talking about getting things done. And as an individual who was from the region, my passion, what I find purpose, and really what I think I can contribute more is actually on the getting things done approach. However, there are many barriers. Some of them are regional barriers. Some of them are that can be circumvented with the right expertise. Just having enough knowledge about how the Middle East works and what the censorship is in this country, etc. That is itself is in a way a lot to know. So what I would love to see, and actually what is already happening, as in the case of Malaysia, is actually have experts who are like me in these regions in which all of us work together. So in that way, everything that is learned here can be applied in other parts of the world, and all of us build a network of like-minded organizations that are trying to do the same things and learn from each other.
So Faisal, there's one last question here, which I just want to read to you. It's from Nate Williams. Actually, I was able finally to name somebody in this Q&A here. And he asks, and this is interesting because you were talking about organizations, and then there's also the social piece of it, the popularizers. How common are video blogs and video bloggers in Iraq? Like some of the science-based YouTube channels, the English-speaking ones, like that English-speaking audiences have access to, things like Stated Clearly or PBS, that kind of thing. And is there a leg to stand on for IBB to work with video bloggers like that? What's it like?
So one of the benefits of kind of modern, and especially the tools that I was talking about, like VPNs and like Signal and all of that stuff, is that it was able to empower many people living in closed societies who didn't have the ability to, for example, release a video but remain anonymous, etc. So there are a lot of video bloggers. One of the most known ones, one of the most known blog is I Believe in Science, which has 3.5 million followers, which is a partner of IBB. And they have helped us expand a lot of our audience. So in fact, that was my first official partnership, was with the I Believe in Science, which is the largest Arab and led by an Iraqi Arab science website in the Arab world. There is a very famous video blogger. His name is Dahih. He actually is a lot like, in a way, kind of like Jon Stewart. So he's a kind of a comedian / scientist. And he is in Egypt, who actually gained a lot of prominence within the past couple of years. Very good in explaining some basic scientific facts in a very entertaining way. Actually, he's closer, I would say, to Neil deGrasse Tyson, as well as like in terms of really communicating things in a kind of a very funny, engaging, and also targeting a lot of youth. So yes, so that is actually a very great thing. Here's what is the barrier. Many of the tools that video bloggers here have is things like monetization, which is they're able, when they create videos, they're able to get paid for it. In Iraq, they don't have that feature because there's no banking infrastructure and you cannot connect a bank account, or you cannot have. So many of these initiatives, many of these science bloggers come and go. And part of it is actually the lack of financial support, is that they cannot actually get supported. So you see that there are some other countries in which have kind of more modern banking infrastructure. You'll see that there's more of these things like video blogging and things like that, in which actually people can make a living talking about science or talking about philosophy and things like that. Where in countries in which some of the banking is more archaic, it's kind of very difficult to actually be able to make a living and be able to do this on a sustainable basis. So that's where a program like the Innovation Hub comes from, and where it actually fills that gap in which those who wouldn't be able to be supported through traditional means, they have an organization called Ideas Beyond Borders that stands with them and stands mainly for the values of science and critical thinking, who's there with them when they need help.
All right. I just want to thank Faisal for a wonderful presentation. And I also want to thank the folks in the audience this evening who had some just really excellent questions. I know we're going to be having individual conversations with you in the weeks ahead, and we just really are so happy you're here this evening and look forward to learning and growing together in the years ahead. So without further ado, thank you and good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, and whatever other time of day I missed. Thank you. Bye all.
Thank you very much. See, I'll have to be in touch with you all.